Hello to everyone again, and welcome to Lecture 2. This is the Perception, Philosophies and Poetics of Sound with Sova Audio Labs, brought to you by Sova Audio Labs and myself, About Face. Really excited about this one. It's the second lecture of our series in discussion with seminal sonic thinker and founder of Function One, Tony Andrews. Absolutely delighted to have the opportunity to talk to Tony about some of his sonic philosophies. We'll be talking about the Transcendental event. We'll go into that in more detail later. We'll be covering the philosophies of sound such as sound and spirit, deep listening, sense hierarchy, whether we potentially have hearing is a marginalised sense, and the pursuit of sonic fidelity to potentially facilitate a transcendental event. Looking at shared altered states of consciousness, how they can be cultivated, and potentially whether there's a link to societal change, and as some music historians state, is linked in with Tony's intrinsic influence, such as the turbo sound and the 80s rave movement, moving into the 90s. A little bit about Tony, for those of you who don't know, which is unlikely. Tony is an award-winning, highly regarded innovator, designer, manufacturer of, it says, I've got my notes, says high quality, but I would say kind of landmark sound systems. He's responsible for founding two international loudspeaker companies, both Function One, and for the sound geeks here, you'll definitely know what Function One is, and Turbo Sound. Tony's landmark developments include the TMS-3 Turbo Sound, the TMS-4, the flashlight and floodlight systems, and the critically acclaimed Function One Resolution series, Evolution and Vero systems. And if you look into the Vero VX system online, it's mind-blowing. He's also done some really groundbreaking work with bass speaker technologies. Tony was an early user of ambisonic surround sound, as in Glastonbury Festival at the Experimental Sound Field in 1992. And Function One, I mean, from my personal perspective, has been a part of my life since I was around 14 years old, being bundled into a car, going to Lid Airport. And there's another story that we'll maybe have time to get into. But really, Function One is regarded as a seminal loudspeaker, a kind of pioneer in the best sounding nightclubs, you know, such as Berghain Output, CeeLo, Space Ibiza, Octagon in South Korea. That's quite a new one, isn't it? It's relatively new.
No, it's been there a while, actually.
Okay, it's new to me. And the CBD in Guangzhou, Concrete, and Motion in Bristol. But really, in this lecture, what I believe is important is looking at Tony's ideological reasons for his innovations, his philosophies of sound, and his intent behind his innovations, not only impacting a legacy or even an epoch of loudspeaker technologies, but also a wider societal influence, which, you know, I've read a fair amount from my personal experience, would argue he has had a societal influence as well, such as his turbo sound in the 80s and moving through to the 90s. So I just want to give Tony a very warm welcome. We're all a little bit like we're fanboys here, so welcome. Very excited to hear more, and we're just going to start off with one sound example, and then we'll get into it.
Well, can I just say thank you for all that? I'd forgotten half of it myself, but it's good to know I've got a track record, yeah. Nice.
Wow. So what was that, Tony? If you'd like to explain what the music example was and why you select it and what it represents to you.
So it's Joe Smooth, Promised Land.
Is it 1987?
I think so.
Yeah, late
it's,
80s.
Let's just say late 80s. It sums up what I think a lot of us understood to be within shall we say, the house music of the mid 80s to mid 90s, I guess. Although it did actually kick off a bit earlier than that. See, there's a zen about dancing, there's a zen about rhythm. And so, if you like, it's a spiritual focus with an engine. And I think, to me, that's what the rave scene represented. And I can recall many times, well, at least over a certain innocent period, shall we say, where people were all together having a good time dancing. The tunes were great. People were lifting up. And it got to a point where everyone had, well, a lot of people had whistles, and all the whistles would start going off, and you could actually feel the whole thing lifting. Nobody particularly, it wasn't orchestrated, it just, there were certain moments where we were just going for the sky as far as I was concerned. And so that track, The Promised Land, is what is on the other side of that feeling that actually the whole thing's lifting up and we don't quite know where we're going, but let's hold on and see where it arrives at. And, you know, we've made some progress at certain times towards that. Same thing was going on that kicked Glastonbury off.
Yeah.
There was a feeling that there was something we had to almost stumble into, and we'd find ourselves in a new state of consciousness.
There's a similar thing. Do you see kind of parallels between, you know, the 50s and the counterculture which cultivated following Stan Groff's work with psychedelics, and then the introduction of these and Leary, and then the overall movement, and then obviously a lot of the things that happened? Was it similar, or did it feel different to that? Do you have any kind of parallels between those two?
I think I'll just go back to what I said. I think it was, shall we say, a communal higher objective with an engine, and that was, for me, that was a difference, having gone through the 60s as well.
Yeah.
It was very much, at the time, it was quite Grateful Dead orientated. It was about spacing out together. But when you get the dynamic of the body, and you know, the groove was going on. The groove's been developing forever. I mean, first time somebody started banging a log, I guess, was, you know, it's inherent to us. And a lot of my friends at the time said, well, these aren't real instruments, this is electronic music. I said, so where do you draw the line on that? So as soon as you pick up a stick and hit a log, well, you're using technology of a sort. So is that wrong? Of course it isn't. So anything works. Go back to the very early 70s. Dub is a function of electronically manipulating tracks that had already been laid down. And with some exceptional results, I might add.
Yeah.
Joe Gibbs comes to mind.
Yeah.
So that track represents that to me, because it's a recognition that there is a place to get to. We need to evolve out of our current condition, and it's not going to be by any political dogma, because we don't even know what it's called yet.
So do you think the Promised Land is a temporal state we can achieve through these kind of shared experiences? It's not a kind of concrete concept. It's something that's there that we're continually reaching for, and we need to occupy that.
There seems to be cyclic periods where we get a bit closer, or shall we say the spontaneity of the time, the innocence of it, allows it to emerge, because everybody's just dancing their nuts off, getting into a Zen condition, and then things start to, you know, the communal consciousness maybe will develop a consciousness. We're all part of it. But I see. I'm trying to describe what I don't really know yet. But I just know that it's a direction to walk in, or even run. And that's what's been driving me for 50 years.
I think it's really clear what you're saying, and I think there's a lot of parallels with when you talk about spiritualism and linking in with that, but with the Taoist spiritual precepts. You know, the Tao is something you can't explain, you can't categorize, you can't speak of. It's something that you experience, and it's. I think there's. I think what you say resonates a lot with what I've read. Within that. So, yeah, very powerful. I guess I want to move the conversation slightly now towards, I'm just going to put up a quote for you, which is just up here. Now, this is kind of looking at from another person's perspective, for looking at some of the social commentators. And the quote is, rave culture provided a forum that allowed British youth a chance to engage with cultural debates regarding individualism, collectivism, entrepreneurialism and morality. In the process of exploring and contesting these key tenets of Thatcherite political dogma that held sway throughout their upbringing. I mean, it's a pretty wordy, hefty thing to unpick that. There is kind of what you're saying is it created this kind of fertile ground, these elements between the Thatcherite kind of politics which was out there at the moment, which drove people to go and seek these communal kind of experiences. But I guess linking in with your experience, not with the kind of theoretical stuff that's read, what to you, Tony, is the role of sound in facilitating shared altered states of consciousness, and what can that potentially lead to in relation to societal change or to cultivate unity and solidarity? Do you think that can influence, forget about the political sphere, but the collective consciousness?
I think it has been for some while. I mean, big audio is quite new. We've only had it 50 years. And it's been noticed by some that, well, everything I said earlier, you know, that I'm not the only one who's noticed this. And as regards the rave culture, I mean, it was just brilliant music. You know, I mean, initially they were taking the best bits of a James Brown track and, you know, and duplicating it. So, I mean, it was just a full-on groove. If you, what's it George Clinton said, free your mind and your ass will follow. And so if you're on a groove, body's happy, mind starts to go places. If other people's minds are going places, then maybe it's the same place. It's there are many layers to the material plane. I mean, it's not just the outside of half of everything that you see. It's actually composed of energy. And there's so much space. It's not even, there are no particles, it's all fields. It's all fields of energy that all pile one on top of another. You know, you get down to string. An amazing fact about size of things. So if you break an atom apart, a simple one like a hydrogen atom, you've got a proton and an electron. And if the proton was the size of a pea, and it was in Piccadilly Circus, the electron would be somewhere in Surbiton for a split second, and it would be the size of a mustard seed. So that's how much space there really is in everything. And then if you start boring into what makes a proton, and you go through the quarks and bore down even further, and apparently it's vibrating strings. Well, if one of the vibrating strings that makes up the parts that make the parts to make a single proton was the size of, say, a tree, and you were standing on this proton, and you were trying to see the electron, it would actually be beyond the visible universe.
Wow.
It's fields of vibration, and there's many many levels, and actually the matter itself is a fucking miracle, frankly, because it not only comes out of practically nothing, it carries on being, so that we can live and go through things, and time exists. Time is probably a function of the material plane.
This touches very similar to some of Henry Bergson's Mind and Matter. And he's...
Sorry, that was a long way about from the Thatcherite thing.
Yeah, it
But
is.
I mean, nobody thought, bloody hell, this is all a bit straitjacket. It's time we did something. Things just happen. And house music coming out of Chicago in the early 80s, with people like Jamie Principle, Frankie Knuckles, it got over here, and we certainly have a tradition of taking something that the Americans and musically
Over here,
ignoring.
we adopted it a lot more than they over there, didn't we? Yeah.
That's what I was saying. We have a tradition of doing that with their music, and realising what it is and expanding it, and then re-exporting it. That happened with blues in the 60s. So there was this fantastic music to dance to, and what more freedom is there than dancing, and even better when you're dancing with other people.
Yeah.
And you're all just enjoying the hell out of it, and that is when these sort of things can emerge.
Yeah.
And thank God it arrived. You know, when it did. Looked at later, you could say, well, yes, it was a massive antidote to materialism.
It was a requirement almost at that time. But I think the Thatcherist dogma and all of the kind of things that Thatcher brought in at that time, you know,
Free
the punitive and free market mentality, all of the different criminal justice acts, were all a response to the rave movement. It was almost, you know, the rave movement happened because it needed to happen, and then the Conservative government were continually trying to respond to that, to limit it happening. So in that case, the rave movement, you know, changed the political landscape in some way. You could say, but I guess kind of linking in with that, I know turbo sound was really important. I mentioned at the start about my first experience at a rave when I was 14 years old at Lyd Airport. I believe it was on remember the 5th of November. That's how I remember the date. Being bundled in and snuck into this rave, and then seeing on flyers subsequently they were actually using turbo sound as a promotion tool. Which was quite interesting.
It was for us too.
Did you have any knowledge that they were doing that? I mean,
we did. In fact, we added it up one day, and there wasn't that much equipment in the country, you know.
Right, so they were lying.
You know, the hundreds of thousands of watts. Well, that's marketing for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Exaggeration and half-truth.
Yeah.
But yes, it was. No, we were pleased because it was what we made it for.
Yeah, it was part of a trident, though, that people like Bill Brewster state was, you know, an interactivity, or caused like a dialogical relationship between the quality of sound, the loudness of sound, the people, the music, and the drugs all together in that moment. And what he says here is it cultivated, along with the punitive nature of Thatcher coming in, of this kind of fertile breeding ground for a countercultural movement. And there's a couple of things here he states, you know, about the disenfranchised youth, rejection of individual freedoms. There's the Section 28 of the Local Government Act, which meant that no school in the country could openly promote homosexuality. And the rave movement kind of become a political movement and a threat to Thatcher's conservatism, and who was continually then kind of reacting to. And then obviously into the 90s, in 1994, famously Section 63 of the Criminal Justice Act, which give police powers to shut down events characterised by the emission of succession of repetitive beats, which is pretty crazy. I just wanted to ask you a question relating to that, because I'm really intrigued to hear your opinion. But can you see any societal similarities now at this current time in relation to the 80s and 90s moving into the mid-90s, in relation to our present day restriction on public liberties, in relation to our present day removal of the rights of protests, removal of being together in these kind of spaces, and an austerity-led government driving more in-work poverty. Do you think 2021-22 could again be a fertile breeding ground for an increase in these kind of raves, which they have been happening? I don't know whether you know, but and it's not obviously in the same way, but there's been a massive rise in free parties happening again. Do you see any kind of link between now and what was going on in the late 80s to 90s?
I mean, we want to get together and dance together, to good sound. We like bass. We like big fat bass.
Certainly.
I mean, it's it's the same human need to get together and dance together. I mean, we've been doing it for eons. It's absolutely right, and the suppression of that. Never mind the. Well, I mean, it's all better. The removal of the right to protest is just outrageous. But what else would you expect from a paranoid viewpoint on life, which is the politics of selfishness, for God's sake? As if, and look where it's got us. I'm afraid it's a complete failure, the whole thing in that regard. And so, and as things start failing and people start realising that things have, there's an alternative way of looking at life, so laws will come in to try and suppress any thought outside the normal stuff. But to take away the right to protest, I mean, it's just outrageous. But I mean, if you well, I mean, these people are mendacious, and probably a lot of them are sociopaths as well.
Yeah, I think that would be a more than fair comment.
So I don't know why we keep putting them in power, but there it is.
I think when you look
anyway, that's not what we're about here.
No. But it's really good to get your opinion on that. I mean, we're only touching on that in this small bit anyway. I think there's more valuable stuff we can chat about, but it was just a really interesting parallel between the two times. I mean, I was very young the first time around, but now, I mean, and being involved in the scene quite heavily, I've definitely kind of noticed these, and looking forward to raving more in the future and seeing how that kind of progresses over the next 3 months. So,
I mean, as far as that goes, a change, so we say, a difference between the late 80s was that everybody was in any clothes they felt comfortable in and just going balls out to dance. A lot of what I see these days, everybody's on their phone.
Yeah.
They're not being here now. And that is an essential part of the story if you're going to get anywhere.
Yeah, because we speak a little bit about deep listening later on, and that's an interesting parallel with what we're going to talk about, actually, about engaging with something on a deeper level rather than this kind of technology cultivated lack of attention or lack of experiencing things on a deeper level, like orally and philosophically. But I wanted to bring the term the transcendental event, because I watched and read a lot about you in preparation for this, and I love this concept, this term that you use, the transcendental event. And could you just explain about that and how you think it can be cultivated and whether you think it's happened?
Well, I mean, that particular phrase actually comes from Terence McKenna, who used to speak of the transcendental event at the end of time.
Was that the stoned ape theory all around the same time?
Could be.
We can go into that later.
He's quite hard to listen to, Terence McKenna. But I mean, man, he's a great thinker and explorer. But once,
I guess, what's your context?
I'm just thinking, how did I get there? Well, I mean, we used to sit around listening to music together, and it was something you did, and you felt that there was, you felt that you were in touch with everybody. So, and this was I mean, they used to call people who had some space, they used to call them heads.
Hit. Yeah, still used now in house music. Oh, the heads will know, for example.
Okay, good.
That's kind of used now as a term.
So one of that,
Yeah.
yeah, and it was people who had awareness that there's more to it than just the outside of half of everything, that there's energy flowing through everything, and that we're all part and parcel of the same thing. And, you know, I mean, we are of the Creator, and when you realise that, it's very important to remember that so is everybody else.
Yeah.
And it's just what state, so we're individuated aspects of the Creator with amnesia, and it's a game that we all engage in to give each other experiences of one sort or another. Let's try and make them nice. As my wife's often saying to me, be kind. And I think that's probably a damn good message. All the great people who've come here to try and, shall we say, wake us up a bit, they've all been saying that one way or another.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
No, that's great. I mean, just moving away, I guess, from the transcendental event. As a thing.
moving away from that. So it's possible
Yeah.
that if the conditions are right.
How do we get there, Tony? How do we get there?
How do we get there? Well, just take the first Glastonbury in 1971. Although Michael Eavis did have a festival in 1970, but it was the London Underground that was involved with the 71 one. And it was genuinely because people thought, well, look, we've got to come together in a field somewhere, enjoy our music, and maybe something really deeply spiritual could occur. And not much has changed since that concept. Sound systems are nothing like they are now at that point. But how do we get there? I think there needs to be an awareness of it. I mean, it's so undefinable that I mean, for a very long time, I've not even spoken about the deeper motivation, but somehow it's different now. I think we do need to know that this is a possibility, because how much more time have we got left in this particular ballpark? I mean, the writing's well on the wall at the moment.
40 years now, before climate breakdown, yeah.
Blimey, it could be the next 10, man.
Yeah. I mean, if this...
It could be just round the corner.
Yeah.
We don't know, but there's, we only need all the methane to come out of the sea. It's already coming out of the permafrost.
3 degrees sea warming, yeah. Once we hit 3 degrees, then the algae, which provides a lot of the oxygen that we breathe, it absorbs most of the carbon as much as the rainforest. So we're very close to that, and I think, yeah, we definitely need.
If we're gonna continue as a species, we have to take our evolution into our own hands, and I think communally enjoying each other is all we have to do. There's no angles. Get the selfishness out of it. That's really probably the only sin in the universe, and. Just touching on politics for a second, capitalism is the politics of selfishness.
Yeah.
It's about, we better hold on to this because those people over there are going to come and take it. Or let's see how we can exploit these people who are not, who are exploitable. Where's the common good? Those that understand should make sure that those that don't get a fair chance. Doesn't seem to happen. Is this the law of nature? I mean, how do you justify the capitalist thing?
Well, only those could justify it, those most benefiting from it. But with regards to capitalism and exponential profits and living in post-industrialism and consumption are all, the main factors of anthropogenic climate change ultimately. So I guess you could say that the answer to that is the same people coming together and changing that ideology, as opposed to, trying to make people act in a certain way to reduce their carbon footprint, for example. But yeah, I mean, I think there's
How do we get there?
yeah, but if I guess moving it towards this transcendental event with regards to sound, because I do believe there's a role of sound fidelity, and how having an impact on someone's experience of music. But I mean, what I wanted to ask you is, what is fidelity's relationship to cultivating a transcendental event, and what is sound fidelity at all stages of the chain, and how does that all impact it?
Ooh, okay. Well, I guess fidelity is important, and by fidelity it means adhering to the truth. When a sound is pure, you can really open your mind to it. You can really accept it. It can become part of you. You can become part of it. When it's, I mean, because I see sound quite often, and when it's covered in jagged distortion, you don't want to go anywhere near it. Nobody wants to jump into a briar patch, or but a nice inviting sea on a very hot day, different matter altogether. So distortion is like that in my mind, and it is a vexation to the spirit. I know that's something I've said, but it hurts. It shuts you down. My long-suffering wife will tell you that there have been many times I've gone into a club and I have got to get out of here, because this is so grievous. I can't stay in it.
And that's common with synesthesia, because I'm synesthetic as well, but I kind of hear colours and see colours and hear sounds, and it's textures. But it's interesting because a lot of the studies with synesthesia show that they have more of an emotional response to certain frequencies or sounds. And also their oral diversity, so the levels of hearing are much higher, much more sensitive, and that kind of justifies the field that you're working in. But so you mentioned there, which links in quite well, that you stated distortion can be thought of the twisting of truth or sonic lies. I just wanted to mention that because I thought that's an amazing quote. But what is the sonic truth to you? I tell you what. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, go on. No.
I was going to say, I tell you what we'll do, slight change. I'll get you to answer that after we're going to listen to something, because we're just going to play a music selection which you selected represents the sonic truth for you. I think that will be, if you're happy with that.
I'm fine with that, Ben. Thank you.
So much dynamic range in that. You're not used to it. It's gentle plucking with that guitar. But yeah, it's very powerful for me. So yeah, coming back to that original question before the slide, then I guess, would you like to just announce what the song was and how it relates to the sonic truth?
Yeah, it's Temptation by Diana Krall, and it's something I use when I'm really critically listening.
Is it like a reference track for a sound system, or?
Yeah. I mean, I do my development by mostly listening to music. We're guided by technology, but in the end, it's going to be a human that's listening to this. So, and over the years, I've learned to trust that what I feel is okay. A lot of other people would probably agree. So that's a nice
Understatement.
thing to know. But you've got, in that track, you've got a whole bunch of things that are actually really helpful when you're trying to do that. Firstly, the recording's brilliant. It's a female voice, which is actually quite often harder than a male voice. And she's very emotionally engaging. So there's a feeling you get when you're listening, which, if I don't get it, I know something isn't quite right, because it's definitely there in the recording. You notice the brushes and the drum and the transient, the edges on those. I mean, they're perfect. They're really crisp. And in fact, I mentioned brushes because it's it's a drum kit, you know, it's guitars, upright bass. It's things we're all used to that we know the sound of anyway.
You can hear the tension on the pick of the guitar.
Yeah.
How you can know how thick that pick is, because the range is so good. So
there's a lot of detail in it.
yeah.
And I mean, I've followed her voice, but it's just, you know, everything she's expressing in the song is hearable. So I use it. I'll use it anywhere. When I'm tuning the system, when I'm in the workshop, in the lab, listening to things, trying to take that next step, which I'm pleased to say is still happening.
Brilliant.
So that's what that track's for. It's completely natural, and I do believe it represents, if you like, a recorded sonic truth.
Yeah, I think it demonstrates it in the actual music really clearly as well. So
Yeah, and then there's other finely recorded tracks, but I'd say to anybody who's interested, you need to be able to emotionally engage with the music. It's not something over there. It's something that can you let this become part of you? Do you want to be in? Do you want to be
enveloped by the physics of it, you know, the sound
exactly?
waves. Yeah.
And that's why distortion is such a problem, because you don't want to get involved, and sensationalism and brute force and ignorance is not the way forward.
So what would be your comment on, like, for example, the Japanese noise scene, Merzbow, these kind of people? Do you have just such a physical reaction? I mean, to them, I guess that distortion is almost weaponized in a way. But what's your opinion on those sort of? I mean, obviously, the use of distortion for harmonics on a guitar is very different from the use of noise.
I'm a big fan of Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
For instance.
Yeah.
So, yes.
That's a controlled use of harmonics as opposed to full on.
Yeah. So
it's a different...
on an instrument specifically to do that.
Yeah.
As a blanket of death over the whole track. No.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that one. But I guess linked in with that, I want to kind of bring in this concept of sense hierarchy. There's some more. If you Google sense hierarchy, there's a little bit of writing on this. It's fairly new, but I mean, from your experience, not from the world of academic stuff, do you believe there's a societal sense hierarchy, and do you think maybe our sense of hearing is marginalised or still marginalised?
Absolutely, no doubt about that at all. I mean, it starts when you're young in the classroom. You know, where's the consideration for any acoustic treatment? Yeah, and you know, and if I mention acoustic treatment, the ceiling is one of the most important things. So we evolved without. We don't have teeth and claws. It's probably half the reason we stood upright, was so we could be aware of stuff coming. But half the time it's dark, and maybe even when it's light, you're in tall grass or you're in a jungle. So hearing's everything. It also happens to be 360 degrees. Is this the moment to talk about the fantasticness of human hearing?
Yeah. Be good
I suppose it is. Right, a good friend of mine, Peter Lennox at Derby University, we have a shared interest in ambisonics, told me about an experiment they'd done with some students, whereby somebody was blindfolded and put in the middle of a circle, and they had a sound source, which, you know, small speaker, which they could move. It's, for nearly everybody, could sense when something had moved. 1 or 2 degrees is all you need. And when you think that, at least on paper, the way we're appreciating that movement is the interaural arrival time, the difference between hitting this ear and that ear, and I guess the weird shapes of it, because nature wouldn't do that if there wasn't a reason, are to do with being able to pick up things above as well.
So just to clarify, ambisonic, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's a height perception as well as stereo.
It can be.
Yeah. Okay.
It can be, and
Just
it was
in case any
that
of you
was
are unaware of that term.
that was Michael Gerson, and it was actually done in the 70s.
Okay.
And surround sound is nothing new. The big obstacle generally with surround sound is the speed of sound. It's very, very slow. But anyway, getting back to it, so we really developed, shall we say, our vector, our location of where a sound was, because, well, whenever you hear a sound, you instantly pretty much know where it came from. And that isn't magic, you know, there is a process. And to do it to the degree we can do it, it uses an awful lot of brain power. So anyway, doing the trigonometry, doing the sums, it seems that we're able to discern separate events in audio down to about 15, 18 microseconds. We're not talking milliseconds, we're talking microseconds, which if you do some more sums, is about 2,000 times the speed, you know, shall we say, speed of perception with the visual sense. Because if you go faster than 28 or 30 frames per second, you don't see the join. It becomes a continuum. To do that with audio, you've got to go 2,000 times quicker. You've got to be you've got to be below 15 microseconds for the brain not to measure it. So that's a huge amount of processing, and this explains why when you're in your typical minimalist, well, I don't know if wine bar with highly reflective surfaces everywhere,
marble glass everywhere,
and within a matter of minutes. I mean, for me, I can't even go in there in the first place, particularly. But I've actually said to people, if we're going to have a meeting, we're going to have to go outside because this is absurd in here. It's just because it's survival, we're forced to process it. Therefore, it tires you out because we didn't develop in hard-walled rectangular boxes. Most of the time we're outside where it's free, and I love sound outside because there's nothing sending it back to you. Because reflections smear the story. So there's secondary arrivals, shall we say. Well, when your hearing is that sensitive, and it is for everybody, I mean, it's going to drive you mad, and it does. It's very wearing because you keep having to try and work out what the hell all this stuff is, and I think it's a very big cause of even more stress than, you know, it's all part of the stress of modern life. And getting back to where I started at school, where it's really important that everybody's focused and on what the
that's distracting, these reflections. I mean,
well, it makes things unintelligible.
Yeah, because the voice can't be heard clearly, and not only that, but you're having these.
You lose interest.
Yeah. So they're just putting up a slide.
So it is marginalised.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely wrong, because it gives you a sense of place. You know, you can be in a reflective building. You keep your eyes shut and you walk outside, and just the whole ambience changes. So I think it's actually criminal how badly respected our sense of audio is.
I've passed out twice in 2 venues because I suffer from claustrophobia when I'm in enclosed places. It's linked in with triggers for my autism. So I've had 2 experiences where it's been flashing lights, very noisy music, like you said before, you know, so not necessarily harmonic content in the harmonic series, and not being able to move from that space. And I've collapsed twice, so I could totally relate with that. But just to put up Tony's quote, which is a brilliant one there, is bad sound is a vexation to the spirit, which I thought is, really clear, and it leads us into the next section.
But your point was, why is fidelity important?
Yes.
I hope now that we've covered why that is important.
Yep.
What we haven't mentioned is the arrival of digital in the 90s,
Yep.
which was absolutely terrible when it started. Just the worst stuff ever. It's only in the last few years with the arrival of Dante, and I'm not on anybody's side with anything, I'm just about good audio, that we've begun to get what digital was supposed to be doing. But I mean, the height of analog in the late 80s, I mean, there's some bloody good albums from that time, and it's taken us a long time to get out of, emerge from just the digital nonsense that's been going on for...
The abuse of the formats, like in...
I mean...
You have control of the loudspeaker and setup and all the processes in the chain, but when you've got someone that's coming and playing music or presenting it, not using the full capability of digital formats, it must be really frustrating for you and what you do.
Totally.
Especially in those clubs that we mentioned.
I'm not a patient man, but I've had to learn some, that's for sure. But I mean, digital's getting all right now, and it's marvellous what we can do with it. But, Gurdjieff said something interesting. Knowledge is like money. You can lose it. And I did genuinely feel that the peak of analog was the late 80s. And we've been through a very, very bad period for maybe 25 years where everybody said, oh, it's digital, it must be great.
Yeah.
Nothing could be further from the truth. It's not great at all. It's actually really, really wrong. And it's a lot to do with clocks. Take the AES standard that everybody, this is what everybody uses. We avoid it like the plague. I mean, I know in isolated cases it's been known to work okay. Its big problem is it sends the timing information along with the packets of audio. That's not the way to do it. Thank God Dante's got us out of that one. Now everybody needs to pull their socks up when using the right chips and getting it right. We need to come back from what I would say was a digital disaster, almost. And it's the same old thing. Everybody thinks digital's the new trendy thing. It must be great. It's not always true.
But there's a massive revival back to vinyl, and
thank God, there's always some awkward buggers who won't let go of certain things.
Yeah, I mean, all my collections on vinyl. I mean, there is, there's a different discussion to have outside of this with regards to, viability, environmental, and all the rest of it. But ultimately, when you move, if you take this in the context of a nightclub, say Berghain, when they originally go from playing a record and the fidelity related to the music on the record, as opposed to moving to CDJs, and people were playing MP3s, it's just mind-blowing the difference in technical fidelity between those two things. And it's literally it's a huge jump, isn't it?
Certainly, and the bigger the sound system,
the more it highlights it.
Yeah, it's like you could take a picture, you blow it up, you can start to see all the pixels. So actually, when the sound system's bigger, things have to be better. So
DJs out there, make sure you're downloading your IFs and your WAVs. 24-bit is the max the CDJs go to right now, isn't it? On the sample rate.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to put some numbers there, I mean, 48's not bad.
Yeah.
96 better. If you go up to 192, then I don't know if there's that much mileage in it. I mean, in terms of the if you like, the amount of information that you have to sling around when you're at that resolution. So a reasonable compromise is, say, 96 at 24-bit.
Yeah.
And you can't hear the aliasing or the join.
Doesn't sound like it's in the washing machine.
When you get speakers where you can actually hear a CD's edginess at the very top,
Wow.
then you know you've got good speakers.
And these speakers sounded pretty good earlier.
They're okay. They're all right.
Can I just link in with this fixation of the spirit quickly? Is there a correlation, do you think, between sonic and spiritual dissonance? How can we raise our sonic consciousness?
Quest for the truth. Judge things on a human voice, one you know. So, especially if you've got, a friend, you know what they sound like, record it, put it through the system. Does it come back and still sound like your friend? Every good sound engineer needs their reference tracks, because you need that emotional engagement, and you need to know it's really, really good. And also look for transient, because that's a very interesting thing.
Yeah.
Transient. It's the first thing that, it's a bit like a sharp knife. It's very easy to make it blunt. And with audio, if you've got intact edges, you get the excitement. Yeah. And in nature, lack of transient smearing and intactness of it means that sound must be near you.
Yeah.
And that if you want something involving or to feel close, that's what you do. You make sure that your transients are really intact, because it's the first thing to suffer at distance.
Yeah.
High frequencies, as we know, have got a fraction of the energy of bass speak frequencies. So, why not? There's just a couple of basics about audio. We've got in light, we've got one rainbow. That's it. We've got the rainbow. That's what we see. The
magnetic spectrum.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Electromagnetic spectrum. With audio, we have 10 of those. Based on the ability to vector locate.
So like 10 octaves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
so we got 10 octaves compared with one rainbow.
Yeah.
At 2,000 times the resolution. And now tell me that it's not a very, very important sense.
So that's an MS-101 and a grand piano, if you're looking at number of keys.
Okay.
No, because that's 2 octaves, isn't it?
So getting back to the size thing again, good bass frequencies, probably about 10, 12 meters.
Yeah.
High frequencies, well, you're down to probably half a centimetre or a centimetre. So there's orders of magnitude differences you'd expect when you're traversing 10 octaves.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why it shouldn't be a marginalised sense. And somebody told me once, we do 3 years architecture and an afternoon thinking about acoustics.
That's crazy. Yeah.
So, that says it. That might be changing. It bloody needs to.
Yeah.
But that's...
it
is marginalised.
I think Xenakis and some of... They have moved it. They've moved it along slightly, but it's still, I think, definitely marginalised.
And it's the feeling. The ambience of a place is the feeling. The difference between the pizza place, where they want a big turnover and it's noisy, someone puts a fork down, the whole room hears it, or you want somewhere classy where they've got carpet on the floor, curtains, it's quite different. And you can speak more eloquently. You can speak with much more nuance. When you're in a cacophony of reflection, doesn't matter how you speak really, because it's just a noise within a bunch of other noises. So I think the message is for stillness, and when you meditate, I don't know about anybody else, but I know that if I just focus on nothing, what I tend to do is listen, and I feel the sphere of listening going out and out and out. That's been one of the things of lockdown, how quiet it's been. You find your mind stretching out until you find something.
Yeah.
And then when it's all really noisy and, average urban life, you're crushed back into your head. which isn't where your mind is.
This is
Your brain's in there, but your mind's out here, and that's so when you meditate in a silent place, that's where you're going.
But this brings us nicely into the next section, and I just wanted to kind of speak about with regards to the human listening and acoustic ecology. So I just wanted to ask you about, with regards to human sound, is it important in a loudspeaker to have a natural representation of sound, or like Nicholas Bourriard states in Relational Aesthetics, is have humans evolved to require some spectacular representation to have a meaningful impact? I mean, I know we talked last time about Xion and sound object placement, and about how sensationalizing through films and media and things like that have maybe shifted the perception of sound into the spectacular realm. But I thought it'd be interesting to ask you that question.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting question, Ben. Well, we're certainly, I mean, we don't evolve. We're not that different. I mean, no one's given up on breathing yet. I mean, we've been doing that a long time, for instance. So it's more conditioning. Have we been conditioned to expect spectacular? Possibly. People quite often think that audio is about how much EQ you can use. And I don't really know why. I mean, my experience says that actually what you want is even. Just like we look round the room, if for instance, green was overemphasized, or in the end, you'd get fed up with it, with everything, you know. Any one of the spectrum colours was overemphasized. Yeah. Now, what you want is that as all of nature only works when it's balanced, and so sound needs to be even. You know, when you're young and starting, we used to, I don't know, because it's all changed in 50 years dramatically, but there used to be a loudness button on hi-fi stuff, yeah. And everybody would press that because it's more bass, more treble. Fine. Well, you know, if you're at the limits of things, you want to know what the edges are. But in the end, that doesn't work because you do need the mid-range. You need voices. You need all those percussive instruments that not quite bass, but they're certainly not treble. And you know, so much of what I hear out there is dodgy bass and shrieking 2 to 5K.
Yeah, overloaded in that
and
region.
All the rest of it is being ignored. It's like you're playing with 3 or 4 colours rather than the whole spectrum.
Oh, that's really...
It's so sensationalising sound. You can do it. You can. They used to have a thing called an aural exciter.
Yeah.
How nice is that?
There's a few plugins that you can
that's
excite your audio with.
Yeah, but in the end, most of these things just get annoying because everything's got this same colour on it. And really, truth is pretty transparent.
Truth is simplicity.
Yeah, it is. It's simplicity, transparency, and probably a load of other good adverbs we can put on it.
You're making this really easy for me because that comes really beautifully as a segue into the next section. I know we're overrunning slightly, but it's such a unique opportunity to have Tony. I hope you stick with us. But so the next sound example, we just want you to play, and if you can, use some high quality headphones to listen to this. So Just to let you know what that recording was, it's a recording in the Wampis territory in Guayabal, which is about near the border of Ecuador in the Amazonas rainforest, and it was taken in my own project called Los Boscasinos, where I developing ongoing art and music projects with an indigenous tribe, and we are exploring co-research and the elimination of roles in research, so no researchee, more of a collaborative, democratic system of ethnography. So if you want to jump online and have a look at my website, my postgraduate thesis is on there if you want to read a bit more about that. But as Tony's quickly nipped off, I just want you to kind of go into a little bit of research about this. But in undisturbed parts of the Amazon rainforest, animals develop niche calls that reside in isolated frequency range. So as Tony was explaining earlier, and on his informed instinctual comment about harmony in nature and the natural sounds. Research that's done by Bernie Krause, I highly recommend that you have a read of some of his books, especially his Nature Orchestra. He found that in undisturbed parts of the rainforest, like you heard that recording, it's the Wampis have never allowed any artist or outsider researcher to spend time with them before. I was the first. So that was an undisturbed part of the rainforest. And what Bernie Krause said, he calls it the biophony. And the biophony is the collective soundscape or the acoustic ecology, to coin another phrase by Murray Schafer, is the collective sound produced by all living organisms, so the natural ecology. He also categorises geophony, natural sounds from the environment that aren't coming from a living animal, although the Wampis believe plants are living. That's a whole other conversation. But he also speaks about the anthropony, if I can get it out, human sounds, but they're often chaotic and not in harmony with the biophony. So what he found across all these range of species is they're occupying their unique frequency range. But not only that, they're linked.
A unique layer.
Yeah, a unique layer.
In the spectrum.
In the spectrum, but not only that, they're also resonant frequencies that are harmonious, so they're not very dissonant sounds as well. So there is almost like, he calls it the nature's orchestra. It's like having a complete orchestra, and then when you put humans in that, it's just disrupting the whole thing. So
of course.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to kind of come to you on that, because you linked that really, really, really well. But does evolutionary nature and physics inform evolution of loudspeaker design? When you come, a lot of this is instinctual, it's almost intuitive for you. It's coming from a precognition. I get that impression. I mean, obviously you're highly educated in these fields as well, but does this kind of evolutionary nature, does it inform your loudspeaker design and evolutions in any way? This, when you look at the isolated frequency ranges of the animals, for example, does that influence when you're developing loudspeaker technology? Or is it just in harmony with that concept?
I think it's in harmony with that concept.
Yeah.
I mean, I think quite recently they found what they reckon was the first bone flute. That was 30,000 years old at least.
Was that whereabouts was that?
Probably
in the Amazon.
No, it might have been in Africa.
Oh, okay.
But there's something about the diatonic scale that was already starting to appear in this instrument. So there is within us all these things. We're built of. It's just our little tiny egos that kind of convince us of nonsense, really. But so it is. Hello, I'm having a brain fade. No, but this is an important point. So the diatonic scale, it's a natural progression, and nature.
In the diatonic scale, their frequencies are doubled almost, aren't they?
Well,
So there is a link. There is kind of like a mathematical harmony as well as a.
what's really
hearing.
interesting about it, though, is it's not completely linear, is it? There's
No.
two places where I think there's a flat missing or something. This is why things turn into their opposite.
That's why we have a tempered scale, and in Asia they have an untempered scale because it isn't equal. Everything isn't equal temperament in music, but we've obviously adopted that. I mean, that's maybe outside of this a little bit, but
Probably.
it's linked in with it. Like, yeah.
But the sense of what's harmonic and what isn't is intrinsic.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I'm evolving, if you like, a bass speaker, I'm going for what makes me physically feel the best. And I suppose that's ties in, actually, I'm just listening to what my body's telling me because it hasn't got any axe to grind in any particular way. It wants to feel as nice as possible. And I get that feeling from bass. So I tune for a good feeling. I mean, we'll measure it, make sure it's not going completely out of order, but generally speaking, that's what we
That's
do.
so interesting because of when you look at, you interlink that with the spiritual perspective, when you look at meditation and nirvana and things like that, they're all about accepting things, accepting the breath and letting it kind of envelop you. And it seems like you kind of almost use that as a way to develop speaker design because you're accepting and in something and then you're interpreting your feeling.
Yeah, well, I mean, all my molecules are being vibrated, and my cells are
So
all
you've
doing
trained
it
yourself in that feeling, basically.
yeah. When it's right, it's definitely knowable.
Can I just point everybody just to have a quick look at the slides here? This is just to wrap this section up, but Bernie Krause says that when you record an unhealthy ecosystem or what he calls a biome, one that has been slashed and burned, for example, the voices tend to be faint and chaotic like an untuned orchestra without a conductor or score. Some of my own research that I'm doing next year looks at FFT analysis and sound localization to find out the illegal mining happening in the rainforest. And so when you cut down sections of the rainforest, the acoustic ecology changes so much that you can locate that part. So there's all sorts of problems with Europeans coming in, throwing mercury on the ground to get oil, so I'm to get gold. So I'm currently working with the One Piece in sort of portable technologies to help detect that because it's affecting child development and stuff like that. But again, more information's on my website if you want to read about that. Because I'm a little bit conscious of time, I'm just going to skip forward to this final bit because I think it's really important about altered states of consciousness, which we've been talking, and deep listening. You know, in order to really have this altered state of consciousness with sound, or to have this experience like Tony's having in some respects when he's doing his speaker development, it's a focused kind of accepting and listening. I just want to have a quick chat about Pauline Oliveros, which the quote up here talks about deep listening is a practice intended to heighten and expand consciousness in sound in as many dimensions of awareness and attentional dynamics as humanly possible. And she says, deep listening comes from noticing my listening or listening to my listening and discerning the effects on my body-mind continuum, from listening to others to art and life. But she, just to kind of skim over this, but she states that there's two ways of listening: focal attention, clear detail to an object of attention. So that would be, for example, in the piece of music before, you would pick out the guitar like I did, I guess because I'm a guitarist. Global attention is diffuse. And that's when, you know, Tony speaks about this open feeling. It's letting everything in, but what's important is the space-time continuum. So not only the sound, listening to, you know, the piece as a whole, but the space in between the piece and yourself. And I guess the analogy I would use is looking at a painting up close, taking 10 steps back, looking at the painting, but then the space in between the painting. And it might sound a bit abstract, but that's really what Pauline Oliveros is speaking about when the space-time continuing. So that she speaks about these four sensations when you listen, deeply. Feeling, which Tony talks about. Sensation, that's body sensation. Thinking is one part of it, which, you know, there is some debate within that, but intuition, and I think I'm definitely agreeing with Tony about this precognition experience of sound in a deep way, as opposed to overly thinking. The thinking is a kind of stage which you would maybe explore more after you listen to it when you're writing a journal, a sound journal, which we'll get you to do. But this, again, we'll provide these slides a little bit later on if you want to read a bit more about this. But just to finish, really, I wanted to do a very quick, deep listening experience. We'll do a very quick, short, closed-eye breathing exercise. And then when you're listening, we want you to look, you know, focally or globally if you want. Consider these following statements. Are you aware of any direct sensations, sensations in your body when you listen to music? Are you engaged in a daydream when you listen to music? So are your intuitions presenting you with imaginary situations or dreams? Are you aware of any feelings as you listen? Feelings develop over time as opposed to emotions, which are immediate reactions. The thinking part, we'll just look at that after, because we want to follow more Tony's perspective on this about, you know, more of a feeling and an intuition. But after the piece ends, I just want you to write down one sentence. It's not for us, it's just for you, so you don't need to be shy about it. Because when you listen deeply and then reflect upon that, it can really harbour some powerful feelings and allow you to connect with it on a deeper level. But so for this part, if you can, please put on your best quality headphones and short close eyes for a pre-deep preparation to listen to a piece of music that Tony's selected, especially for this. Please keep your eyes closed what I want you to do is, if you can close your eyes, have your headphones on. So legs on the floor, your palms are rested gently on your thighs. I want you to inhale through your nose for the count of 6. Take a deep breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold for the count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Keep your throat relaxed. Exhale gently out to the count of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now return to your natural breathing pattern, witnessing the breath. At the sound of the singing bowl, listen intently for the interplay of sounds in the whole space-time continuum. So, wow. So just again, if you want to write a sentence down, think about your feelings, your sensation, intuition, whether you had any kind of dream-like visualizations. I had a blue moon that turned to red for a very short period of time. I don't know what that was, but I got lost in a bit of that, sorry. I'm a bit distracted now. But did you want to just tell us about that piece and, you know, the reasons for selecting it?
Yeah, it was a brilliant band from the late 60s. It was very, very to the point, actually.
And it's family.
Yeah, the band is family.
Yep.
And I mean, it's one of those rare albums that nearly every track is really good.
I found it quite hard to find, actually, but I've been listening.
Yeah,
is it a family experiment? Is it?
No.
Oh, I can't remember. We'll find out and let you know, but it's 69.
But I partly chose it because of, shall we say, the political side of things that you'd introduced. I thought, well, and I listened to the words, I said, well, there it was. You know, that was back in the late 60s. You know, the politicians, the government, it's all a load of nonsense. Does Mr. Zhou Enlai happen to be the Chinese ambassador at the time? Is the Eastern Bloc really straight or not? Or are there heads in Asia Minor? But the real important thing is we only want to turn the whole world on. And that's what the hippies believed. That if everybody got high, then they'd see a better way, and hey presto, we'd all be in nirvana.
Turn on, tune in, and cop out. Obviously,
Drop out
dropouts.
to
Yeah.
tune in to whatever. I can't even
yeah.
remember now. It's so long ago. But
Leary,
but
wasn't it?
there's music is definitely the vehicle for better thinking. It also can be a vehicle for worse thinking, but we don't have to go there.
Yeah.
And that's partly why I chose that. And also, I think that their music needs a bit of exposure. It's been
brilliant.
totally forgotten. Yeah. It's bang on the point.
Yeah.
And so that's why I chose it. And if you deep listen, you get the words. Did you by any chance do any EQ on it?
No, I didn't.
Okay,
No.
I just wondered. It's
Probably maybe the space or had done something.
Yeah,
to
like
it.
So
It's volume as well. Perception can change, can't it?
Yeah.
But I didn't touch it. There's no
but I
dynamics.
thought the words that would be part of good for what we're doing is we
Yeah.
only want to turn the whole world on
Yeah.
and put the people back on the road to reality. Because we're not in reality. We're in this fake reality created by adverts that it's
Companies.
bloody Jackanory land. It's like, it's nonsense. You don't need all this stuff. You don't need to be trying to get what you are from over there. It's right here with you. You don't need the Kardashians' bum in your life.
I totally. And on that note, I think it's a perfect time to end. Absolutely amazing, as insightful as I thought it would be, Tony. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time, so I thank you greatly.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk, to just talk about stuff.